See, black people made it because they wouldn't take that stuff, right? The maitre d'd say, over here, sir. No, sucker, over there.
Before Robin Williams, and well before the internet, there was another high-profile and shocking case of a megastar that took his own life. Just when Freddie Prinze Sr. was at the top of his fame, it all came to a screeching halt by his own hand. Now, imagine Jerry Seinfeld taking his life during season 5 of Seinfeld. You know, never even getting
nothing for you.
But even if you remember that day, reading that shocking headline about Freddie being gone, do you really know what was going on behind the scenes that foretold of the coming tragedy? He was the Prince of Comedy, but heavy lies the crown. Welcome, I am your host, Nostalgic Nick, and we have a really telling collection of Freddie's most outrageous stunts that kinda warned of his inner turmoil. Plus the personal context for why that was. The perfect storm of pressure as one of the few Latino stars to make it big. A failing marriage at home, and substance abuse abound. We here at Do You Remember all love delving into the stories of our favorites just as much as you do. And there is real, human, never robotic heart going into every video, so we would love your support with just a simple thumbs up. And hey, maybe subscribe if you like our content. But now without further ado, let's unravel the original tragedy of a comedian gone too soon. Tough lessons learned early.
You ever see people who take Spanish in school and try and talk it? Como estas usted? Muy beans, grassy ass, thank you.
You know the phrase, lightning in a bottle? Well, that perfectly describes Freddie Prinze Sr. When he made his debut on Johnny Carson, he was just 19 years old, when a lot of people today are still figuring it out. Just look at these comments. But Freddie kept it really cool in the national spotlight, still technically a teen, but he showed off a talent for comedic timing that we wouldn't see again for years. And as far as demographics go, we hadn't seen a high-profile Hispanic or Latino comedian of such fame since maybe Desi Arnaz. But this put the young Freddie in a very unique and pretty difficult position. As a kid of mixed heritage, he was in a tough spot since day one. Prinze was half Puerto Rican and half Hungarian, or as he called it,
I'm a Hungarican.
We actually know, thanks to Freddie's mother from the Freddie Prinze story, that he had it really tough growing up. He had trouble fitting in and clicking with the kids of either background. It was a childhood defined by loneliness, and on top of that, he had really bad asthma. So he was limited with how much roughing around he could do, which, you know, is kind of a nightmare for a kid looking to bond with others. He became close to his mom, but stayed very distant from dad. With a lot of doors closing on him, you know, because of asthma or fear, Freddie marched his way through the door of performing arts. His teachers knew even when he was young that he excelled, and they had no problem believing in Freddie. Next up, he gambled on himself, and he applied to New York's High School of Performing Arts. Rejection always stings, and that was exactly why Freddie kept this big ambitious plan secret from his folks until he got the yes. But following this dream meant being away from the mom who was a shoulder to lean on during all those lonely years. Let it be known that he himself outright said that his difficult childhood was one of the biggest influences in his life. He said, quote, "If it had been any different, I would not have become what I did. I might not have the ambition and the desire to get out of it. But as we'll see, it kept on influencing the boy into the man and contributed to his end." Why did Freddie Prinze change his name? Walking a difficult line didn't get any easier once Freddie got his foot in the door. The quick-witted Freddie Prinze was born Frederick Carl Prutzel. Now we know image is everything in Tinseltown, so our ambitious budding comedian knew he had to be who the people wanted to see from the top to bottom. That meant a name change to Freddie Prinze. The surname was of course a play on the word prince, and the regal connotations are entirely deliberate. His original plan was to use the last name King, like king of comedy. But Alan King had already beat him to the punch, so Freddie became the Prince of Comedy. We actually know all this thought process thanks to his good friend, you know, the other great comedian David Brenner, who, fun fact, was the most frequent guest on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Pressure from all sides.
Everybody Everybody's so stupid. Archie Bunker, everybody, I don't like nobody.
You get off the stage, please.
Remember when I said that Freddie had a hard time settling into one group or one demographic? Well, that personal tug-of-war never really went away.
My father, being that he was a gypsy, of course, he bought me a violin. My Puerto Rican mother made me play it this way.
Oh, he for sure capitalized on his mixed background in his comedy sketches, but that put him between a rock and a hard place. Audiences got a great laugh out of his sketches based on his background, and hey, a win's a win. But the communities who he poked fun at did not love the content of his jokes. Because, well, frankly, they were kind of stereotyping.
There was no black people in the Olympics. Well, it's very hard to go down a ski slope at 90 miles an hour dribbling a basketball.
Everyone wants to be known for who they are, not blanket statements and overblown jokes. But despite the hate, they also couldn't deny that Freddie had broken new ground for Hispanic comedians since Jerry Sr., who had to fight to even appear alongside Lucille Ball. I mean, TV wasn't so ready for a mixed couple back then. The trauma of his childhood and his deep identity crisis followed him right to the throne as the Prince of Comedy. But now, Freddie was gonna have to deal with all that with the national spotlight on him, because his biggest triumph became his biggest trouble. Here's Johnny.
And now, here's Johnny.
Armed with The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson was something of a kingmaker, deliberately or otherwise. Look no further than the whole kerfuffle with the self-described psychic Uri Geller, who he thought fumbled the show and ended up bigger than ever. He's had Farrah Fawcett, Jim Henson, Frank Sinatra, Burt Reynolds, even Robin Williams.
You see the girls at the Rainbow Bar and Grill have taken one too many Quaaludes going,
Is my lipstick on?
There was no doubt this was the cool kids' table. David Letterman actually spelled it out when he said, quote, "It became pretty clear to me what the formula was to become successful in show business. You move to Los Angeles, you go to a place called the Comedy Store, you get on The Tonight Show. Then came a new kid on the block."
Would you welcome Freddie Prinze?
Yeah.
Freddie?
The day, December 6th, 1973, and in walked Freddie Prinze to the NBC studios. Even then, everything was already going against this guy getting a chance in the spotlight. The show's producer, ironically named Freddie de Cordova, took one look at Prinze in his dressing room and told the talent booker Craig Tennis that he wanted the guy out. He hated him, and so would Johnny. So Craig readied his usual speech to let them off gently. "We ran out of time, we'll call you, set something up again, you know." But that night's lineup just wasn't having any of it. Diane Keaton did her bit, and then Sammy Davis Jr. ended early. Shoot, there was plenty of time to be filled, and zero excuse to not bring on Freddie Prinze.
Because all mothers say this, right? Don't wear those ripped underwear. What if a car hits you and they take you to the hospital?
And hey, I don't know if Carson could sense the air of rejection poised to drown this poor guy, but he had a really great preamble that touches the heart as much as it breaks it.
We have a new young comedian with us tonight. As you know, this is a hard commodity to find in this business, are young guys who can come out in front of an audience and not have a great deal of exposure and try to find people accept what they do.
It's a really nice warm-up to the new star, who almost never was, but also pretty much exactly lays out Freddie's lifelong dilemma of being accepted. Freddie performed for a total of 325 seconds, but it took him just 15 to get his first big laugh, and after that, he was landing joke after joke.
I could never figure out how my parents met, a gypsy and a Puerto Rican. I asked my mother. She said they're on the subway trying to pick each other's pocket.
This was the first time that Carson brought on a debut comic, and for a full sit-down chat no less. Which wasn't guaranteed. Johnny Carson always had to like the guy's set to bring him for the chat. And I don't think there were any regrets for bringing Freddie on. It's not even an exaggeration to say that in a blink, Freddie was a household name. People loved him on Carson, and then he landed Chico and the Man a year later. Unfortunately, as the saying goes, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And if Freddie thought that the industry pressures that forced his name change were over with, well, he was sorely mistaken. Too much fame, too fast. Freddie really went from a hopeful dreamer to the real deal. More appearances on Carson, Chico and the Man. Now throw in some appearances with the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts. The guy got taped albums of his comedy shows. Anyone out there actually have a vinyl? It's tricky pinning down an exact net worth, but we know that eventually, Freddie would be able to buy plenty of jewelry, furniture, silver, paintings. All in all, a very sizable estate to leave his loved ones. His buddy, the legendary David Brenner, said that Freddie was something of a people pleaser, bending over backwards to do what was asked, and taking on every promotional deal offered.
For everybody, I don't like nobody.
Will you get off the stage, please?
Probably because of his unprecedented fame that he landed overnight. Suddenly, the guy had so much, and didn't want it to just go away. Freddie was living his dream and doing a darn good job at it. But that attitude also meant that Brenner had to be the voice of reason. Whenever Freddie asked for advice, Brenner didn't hesitate to tell him that he couldn't just take exhausting demands lying down. I think one of Brenner's best nuggets of advice was, quote, "There is nothing worth giving up your own self for." Next up, let's look to Peter Greenberg, the producer of the TV bio Can You Hear the Laughter? The Story of Freddie Prinze. Now this guy studied Freddie's psychology inside and out. Peter succinctly explained, quote, "He never got a chance to think. He was moving too fast." The exhausting burnout snowballed and ended up exacerbating another problem that had plagued Freddie since his not-so-distant youth. And it was one that made things oh so much worse for him. The dangerous drug of stardom. Freddie and drugs were close companions since he was around 16. That's when he began to use, well, the white stuff. This habit became a 5 grams a day addiction. And then he graduated to Quaaludes. He bought them in units of hundreds at a time. So now he's super famous, okay? Super busy. How did he keep his newfound fame? Well, it was almost like tossing a match into gasoline. Freddie's Quaaludes habit was even prescribed by a doctor. When his mother found out the extent of his drug habit, she wept. It made it so much worse knowing that he was full on relying on these prescribed substances just to get through the day. And all of this would come to a head in a very fateful way. Going overboard. It's easy to get hooked on his usual comedy routines about life, growing up, poverty, different cultures. They're hilarious, they're nice, they're easy to recite thanks to his nifty catchphrases. And again, we're reminded of Desi Arnaz, whose wife had some splaining to do.
You only got one head. Why do you buy so many hats?
But when the cameras weren't rolling on set and the audiences weren't in their seats, Freddie had an entirely different outrageous routine. One of his favorite films was the Zapruder film. Yeah, the Zapruder of the JFK attack. Not exactly home video material, Freddie.
How can you watch a talking horse?
Why not? I work with a talking jackass, don't I?
Oh, but the fun with firearms didn't exactly end there. His other hobby included playing Russian roulette, live bullets and all. He made sure to always have an audience of friends who could only look on in absolute and totally understandable terror while he waved the gun around at his own face. One time he had a terrifyingly close call once he aimed the gun at his head, changed course, and fired it outside. Bam, it went off. In fact, the force of the blast knocked Freddie right off his feet. I mean, just think of that, watching your famous friend nearly take his head off. I think I'd need all kinds of therapy just watching that happen. Sometimes other people fell into the crossfire, and I do mean that upsettingly literally. Freddie was pretty happy with his place at the top, but then in danced a fella named John Travolta, who earned a spot on the front cover of a teen mag. I guess that got on the nerves of Freddie, because according to the Showtime docuseries The Comedy Store, and testimony from Freddie's other pal Jimmy Walker, Freddie tried to go medieval on Travolta, again distressingly literally. According to Walker, Freddie told him, quote, "We've got to kill John Travolta." Supposedly, he also said, quote, "I'm going to kill this guy. I'm the biggest star on TV." When Jimmy tried to talk him down, reminding Freddie that lots of people are on TV, Freddie very graciously said, quote, "You're not bigger than me, man. I'm the biggest guy. I'm the best guy. Everyone knows me. I'm the funniest guy." Yikes, that's some dynamite egotistical thoughts. Did they go through with it? Well, no, because John Travolta is still alive. But Freddie dragged Walker along to John's home, and although the Saturday Night Fever star was boogieing somewhere else, Freddie, armed with a crossbow, fired 3 warning shots into his front door. I think I can hear the mafia taking notes, awarding points for creativity.
Do I bother you? I don't bother nobody. I'm nice, man, but you talk about me again, I kill you.
Now, the reps for Travolta haven't gotten back to us yet, but bolt marks in a door are bolt marks in a door. Prince's personal pains. Strangers weren't the only ones who had to deal with Freddie's antics. He married former cocktail waitress Catherine Cochran in 1975, but just as soon as the flames of love began, they sputtered. And by that time, Freddie was so deep in the grip of narcotics, alcohol, you name it. It was pumping in his blood. The marriage was falling apart, even when Freddie tried to be in denial about that. Things got so bad that not only did Kathy file for divorce, but she filed for a restraining order. And in this case, Freddie knew full well where the source of the marital woes came from. He talked to his mom, who had been his shoulder to lean on since childhood. And when she asked in shock why things were ending so fast, he outright said, quote, "I have to take care of myself, Ma." Just a year into the marriage, the couple had Freddie Prinze Sr. And when Senior's mom reminded him, "Hey, there's a baby in the picture, you sure you want to let this all go?" Freddie said, quote, "That's my biggest concern, Ma." Freddie remained an enigma to the very end. A troubled upbringing that sparked a drug habit, coupled with depression and pressure from all sides. The industry, communities he never quite fit into.
My dad hated being on Chico and the Man. He hated it. Chico meant boy.
All of this snowballed onto Freddie Prinze, and it all inspired some alarming behavior that caught some other people in the blast zone. Leading up to January 29, 1977, Freddie was doing his most disturbing activities yet. The writing was on the wall, and the writing was also in his farewell letters to those that knew him. Of course, the most telling piece of evidence trying to unravel his final moments. But even so, on that late January day in California, Freddie Prinze Sr. shot himself in the head. The young man was just 22 years old. At first, reports were all saying he killed himself, and it certainly fits the troubled path he was on, but things are a bit more complicated when you dig. A few years later, in 1983 to be exact, a Los Angeles jury basically made a ruling 9-3 in a life insurance case that concluded Freddie's death had actually been an accident. And as a result, Crown Life Insurance Company had to honor the policies he took out years prior. Before his bewildering and untimely death, Freddie had found himself in a messy financial situation. You see, he kinda wiped out most of his fortune, but he had lined up contracts worth several million with NBC and Caesar's Palace. What he had went to his beloved Ma, and of course to his son, the far too young Freddie Jr. His wife was left out of the will, as was his father, who he was never really able to connect with, and whose emotional distance was just another weight that Freddie had to carry through his life, smiling for everyone else. The end of this brilliant star is grimly fascinating, but it's the laughter that Freddie caused that his family wants us to remember at the end of the day. As his son, Freddie Prinze Sr. wished, quote, "If people would only think of his gift instead of his death, I would love it." I have this album of his stand-up, Looking Good, and no matter how upset I was, anytime, ever, the second I played it, he could make me laugh. He was so sharp and spontaneous, so fast. And yeah, we here at Do You Remember certainly agree with that. No one expected the curtain to fall as suddenly as it did on Freddie Prinze, who became almost historic for how fast he exploded into stardom and how it all ended. But the gift of hindsight gave us a lot to think about, from his inner torment from society, depression, and drugs, to the pretty bombastic way he channeled all those emotions. It's just a shame we had to see such a downfall at all. But if you think about it, it sure wasn't the last. So what was your favorite stand-up bit from Freddie Prinze? Does anyone out there have a record of his stand-up? Have you kept up with his son's acting? And how big of a star do you think Freddie Prinze Sr. would have been if he hadn't have taken his own life? Well, please get down below and tell us all things Freddie Prinze Sr. and Freddie Prinze Jr. and of course, Chico and the Man. Do you remember watching Freddie on Carson? Did you know he was gonna be that big? Well, please let us know. After all, we here at Do You Remember are nothing without you. So if you enjoyed the video, which we sure hope you did, please hit that thumbs up icon to show our channel some support. It really helps a ton, and we certainly appreciate it. If you like the content, make sure you're subscribed. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you so very much for watching, and have a great day.